Whoosh. Can you predict the outcome of a street fight? So I have a subscriber that asked me if can you sit on your butt and then fight off your butt. So basically, you would scoot your butt towards the person that you're fighting and maybe go for an ankle and then fight from there. Because he said in a street fight he actually did that, and the guy had to come down to his level because he wasn't standing up, right? Remember, a street fight is a whole different kind of beast, whole different atmosphere. You cannot predict the outcome of a street fight. Just like MMA, UFC, combat sports, those are games, right? And even with that, sometimes it's difficult to predict who's going to win, even though you have the rules and you can scout out the opponent, you can read stats and watch videos. Sometimes you can, pick who's going to win or not. But in a street fight, you can't predict that, right? Like you see here in this picture. This is MMA, right? It's a game, it's a sport. So depending on the kind of sport that you're playing, the game that you're competing in, you have rules that's based on the kind of sport that you're in. So MMA, you cannot kick to the groin, you can't jab finger in the eye, but you could take the opponent down and wrestle them and submit them, right? You can use elbows and knees, right? And you have a 4-ounce gloves on. Like in boxing, you can't kick in boxing, right? But you have gloves on, right? You can't elbow in boxing, you can't knee, right? You can't headbutt, right? In MMA, you can't headbutt either. But in the beginning of the sport, way back in '93, that's when I started to, pay attention to it. There was very minimum rules, if no rules at all, basically. So back then, you could headbutt, you could jab finger in the eye, punch you to the groin. I mean, UFC 1, 2, 3, there were guys in there poking finger in the eyes, punching to the groin. There was very limited rules, if there was any rules from what I remember, right? But the thing is that it was underground, so it wasn't really getting the recognition to go mainstream because, to promote something like that, it's going to be kind of tough. So they're going to have to put rules in it so that they could show it to a wider audience. So that's what happened. The UFC became mainstream, so they have to put rules. But in the beginning, there was basically no rules, right? There was no rules at all. You can do whatever you want to do. And that's why I'm trying to explain to you that, yeah, MMA is a sport, it's a game, but it's a simulation of what could happen in a street fight. As I said, you can't predict a street fight, but what you do in MMA, the takedown, the ground and pounding, elbow, knees, just basic concept of implementing variety of different techniques, you would actually do that on the street. No, there are no weapons in the cage other than your hands and your feet. So there's no knife and guns. And then there's time limit, and then there's referees and so forth. Back in the days when UFC came out, there was no time limit. So you had fights go on for hours, man. And usually the fight would be over, I guess, when the opponent get knocked out or he just quit because he's exhausted because he's been fighting for hours. So MMA, in my opinion, is a good simulation of what could happen in a street fight, right? Just because you have variety of techniques that you could use, right? And the fight could end up anywhere. You could be standing up or you can be on the ground. And as you know, in a street fight, you can't predict it, but majority of the time, ending up on the ground is very possible. That's just what it is. You don't know how many guys are fighting in the streets. You don't know if the guy have a weapon. You could end up on the ground. Now, being on the ground, in my opinion, in a real life situation, you don't want to be on the ground. You want to try your best to keep the fight standing up if you get into a street fight. If you can avoid a street fight, avoid it. That's the first thing to do. Always avoid a street fight if you can. And you want to stay standing up. In the game, in the sport, yeah, you see guys on ground and pounding. But you will see that too on the street. But you want to avoid being on your back on the street or being on your belly. That's the last place you want to be. I'm telling you that right now. You don't want to be on the floor at all. right? If you can avoid it, right? So, I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, there are submissions too, arm bars that can pull off. Yeah, you can pull it off in the street too. But again, you don't really want to be on the street with your back on the ground arm barring somebody, because you don't know how many people you're going to be fighting. You don't know, people around you. People could just jump into the fight and step on your forehead and step in your face, right? So while you're trying to armbar somebody, somebody's kicking you in your face, right? Also, don't forget about the extension of the hands, which is knife and gun. So you could be armbarring somebody, and the person probably have a knife, just start stabbing you, or somebody else come up and stab you because you're armbarring their friend, or even worse, shoot you in the face. You see what I'm saying? So you can't predict the outcome of a street fight, but sometimes you can avoid it if you can, and you want to stay standing up, right? Now, there are organized street fights, like what you see here with Kimbo Slice, where you organize, you put money down and say, okay, we're gonna fight or whatever, and whoever win get $1,000 or something like that, which is an organized street fight. So something like that, you know, you kind of can predict it in a sense because just two guys fighting and then nobody else supposed to jump in, right? But a straight on brawl in the streets is a whole different thing, whole different kind of beast, man. That's something that you just want to avoid, man, because the outcome of that can be anything, life and death, right? You can't predict that, especially in a brawl. This is organized here, like I showed you, Kimbo Slice. It's organized, but still, somebody could still jump in, but you have your friends around making sure nobody jump in, right? Somebody might have a gun too, just to make sure, just to back up his friend. It still can get dirty and nasty too, but it's organized. Here, this is just a straight on fight. If you notice, one guy's on his belly and the guy's right on his back, hitting him from behind. Worst situation to be in. Right here is life and death. The guy could die right here, right? And make it worse, he has a friend that's circling around to make sure that the guy don't pull a knife out or a gun, unless the friend would just kick him in his head or step in his skull, right? You don't want to be in a situation like this at all. Now, if the guy in his belly knew some jujitsu, and I mean actually knew it now, like know what he's doing, it could be a different outcome. But again, he doesn't have no experience in that, right? If he had some prior competition fights, or maybe trained some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and have some simulation of fights, it probably could have helped him. But again, this is a brawl, straight on brawl. Anything can happen here. Somebody can pull out a knife, a lot of people standing around watching, friends could jump in. Anything can happen here. This you can't predict, right? So to my subscriber, that was mentioning that if you could scoot on his butt, because that's what he did in a street fight. You don't want to be on your butt in any street fight. You don't want to be on the ground in any street fight. You want to be standing up. Now it'd be different if you were crawling on your four, legs, your hand on your legs. That's how you would walk. It's like a dog. That'd be different. But you walk straight up, standing up. So your two legs is what gets you from point A to point B. So you don't want to be on your butt, because then you have to get up from off your butt. And while you're doing that, there's just too much time going to be wasted in between, where you could get kicked in the face, you can get shot, you get stabbed. If it's organized, then it's different. Right here is a prime example why you don't want to be in your butt. You have like how much guys here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's one guy on the ground just getting kicked and punched. Now, if he was standing up, he'd be different. He'd be mobile. He could move left, move right. He could run if he needs to. Situation like this, he probably wants to run. Okay, you got like 6 guys on him, right? So this is a situation that you don't want to be in, and you don't want to be in your butt in a street fight. And having competition and some simulation of real life fights, like compete against different people, will help you in a real life situation, right? As I said, you cannot predict a street fight, but having a confidence to deal with different body types, height, weight, and experience boxing, striking with different kind of people other than in your school, and you go to competitions, will help you in a real life situation, right? Now you have these. You have gun, knives, brass knuckles, swords, tonfas, name it. All type of different weapons here. Shotgun, 45, name it. Everything is here on this table, right? You got these. So these change the whole entire thing. No matter if you're coming with your punch or your kick, or you're gonna bite and poke eye and kick in the groin. This is just gonna solve all that, right? So as I said, you can't predict the outcome of a street fight, and you have people out there who have these, right? And a lot of times, depending on who you're messing with, they ain't afraid to draw it out on you. So you can do all the kicking and punching and all the self-defense techniques you want. When it comes down to it, yeah, you better be able to kind of run if you need to. Stand up on your 2 feet, don't be on the ground. Or you just have so many competitions that you're so confident in yourself to where you can hit, bam, bam, and you know that one hit can take your opponent out, and then you move. So grabbing groin and poking the eye, yeah, that can work in a street fight, but that doesn't mean you're gonna be able to implement that when time comes. You don't know how much people you're gonna be fighting, right? You have to be prepared in a way where it comes natural, to where you have the confidence, and a lot of that confidence is going to come from experience. It's the same thing like if you have a gun but you never shoot it. You never shot the gun before, but when time to shoot it comes, it's like you freeze up because you never shot it before. A lot of guns have different kickback, but if you're practice shooting, you would actually know that. It's just like in a fight. If you don't compete against different people, you're never really knocked down in the body with a punch or a kick to where you knock them out, right? You're not going to know what it feels like to actually do it in a real life situation. You could say you're going to poke somebody eye out and kick somebody in the groin, but if you never poke anybody eye out, literally dig the eyeball out, you're not going to know how to do that when it comes to real life situation, because you're going to freeze up. That's what I'm saying. Simulation, yeah, it's a sport, it's a game, but it's a simulation of what could really happen. And that's why you have to train in a real life situation where you're basically competing against different people, right? To test your skills. And you gain this knowledge from competing, fighting, sparring, right? Grappling, mixing up your techniques, being in situations that are uncomfortable, where you're pushed day in and day out to where you want to quit. As I mentioned, there's no real way to prepare for an actual real street fight because there are weapons involved. And you can do all the self-defense techniques you want. You can, you swing a knife at me, I block, I do this and that and this and that. But you can't predict the outcome. So anything is possible, anything can happen in a street fight. And in my opinion, the best way to prepare for it is to be able to move when you need to, stand up on your foot, and having the confidence to know that if I throw this one punch, or if I throw this one kick, I can knock this guy out cold. You're going to have to be able to have that in your mind now, meaning that you can't freeze up when time comes, and you're going to gain all that through competition, through the simulation of competing against different people. That's the only way you're going to know that. If you haven't experienced that, and you're just in your school playing around and tip-tapping, you don't know what you're in for. It's going to be a huge wake-up call for you. Huge wake-up call, right? Let me give an example. It's similar to if you've been striking all your life, and all you know is just to punch, kick. You got footwork, and you train it all your life, and you feel good in your school, like you got this, you can punch and kick anybody you want to, right? But you never study no ground game. So, you're like, oh man, nobody can ever take me down. I'm the best martial artist in the world. Until you went ahead and then spar or fought with a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Now, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt has no striking at all. But then he just happens to can close the distance quick on you. And once he closes into that grappling range on you, the punch and kick won't work anymore. But you don't have the knowledge and experience to understand that you can stand up and you can end up on the ground also. So then there is ground fighting, but you don't study that. You don't have the knowledge to understand that. And a lot of times you really can't blame the person because it's just ignorancy and it's just experience. They never had anybody kick their ass or put them in that kind of predicament. So if you've never been in that predicament, you will never know. You're just like the street. If you've never been in a street fight, you will never know what it feels like. So you feel like whatever you're doing in your school is going to be effective on the street. The only way to actually truly know something and really understand it is to go through the experience of it and go through the grind of it, which could be a simulation of it, which pushes you. And not just sparring against one guy that you spar with every day. You know, you mix it up, bring different guys in, bring guys in who are wrestlers, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, who are more experienced than you on the ground. That's gonna whip your ass. Because if you don't understand the ground and you never trained it, you're gonna be in problems. Now, if you do have striking, and say you train the ground from time to time, but you know you're not really putting much emphasis into it, right? You still can end up in problems because you're gonna have that one guy who is really a professional and taking you down, a wrestler, and he will find a way to take you down. Even if you hit him, he will take a hit just to take you down. And keep this in mind: if you haven't really knocked out a person before in a fight, chances of you actually knocking them out in a real situation is going to be very unlikely, right? Because you don't have the experience in knocking somebody out. You never test the power in an actually simulation of a fight. You know, as I said, competition, which could emulate an actual real street fight. So if you haven't tested your power, I mean, you're not going to know. Hitting a punching bag hitting pads is completely different than actually hitting somebody that's moving. Fighting a regular Joe on the street is completely different than fighting somebody who actually knows what they're doing, right? What you think might work in an actual street fight might not work against somebody who actually knows what they're doing, right? Yeah, you can probably punch the average Joe and, you know, probably knock him down, but you don't know who you're fighting. Right? That's why you have simulations. That's why you test yourself. You prepare yourself through competition. You know, not just sparring one guy that you have in your gym all day who doesn't know anything. You know, doesn't make any sense. You gotta cross train. You gotta train with different body types, different weight. Train with wrestlers, train with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, train with guys that do Muay Thai, train with Kung Fu, Taekwondo, Karate. You gotta mix it up. That's the only way you're gonna get better. Now, if you're just interested in just doing forms and katas, you know, and just doing more the meditation in the martial arts, you know, not worrying about using the martial arts for street defense, then it doesn't matter. You don't have to compete in anything because you're not trying to teach street combat, right? You know, if you're just trying to draw a gun and shoot, then so be it. But if you're trying to teach street combat, where you have to land punches and kicks, you got to do simulations of real life fights where you actually compete against actual people. Because that's the only way you're going to have the knowledge to teach somebody else, right? It doesn't make any sense you trying to teach street combat when you yourself don't have any experience in it. Not even in a full contact fight or a point fight or, you know, something that simulates a real fight other than just fighting somebody in your school. You see what I'm saying? So that's just what it is.